All right, Stochastic, here we go. It's your old pal EMac coming to you on a Saturday afternoon. It's live before lock here for NBA. We have an early start time. The association does give a nod every now and then to the NCAA tournament. This is one of the days. There is a 5 o'clock game, a 7 o'clock game, and a 7:30 game. So all three, the main sites all grab this early game. So we're rolling with it as well. Baseball was a little wonky today. Finally, they're doing a lot of 4 o'clock games early in the spring, which I know local time in other places is one o'clock, Greg. But we used to just get tons of 1 o'clock games on Saturdays. At this point in the year, that's kind of silly. So it's fun seeing those all consolidated and making good slates. So it's been a bountiful DFS day, and we've got MMA coming up. I've registered for a whole bunch of contests. I might be doing battle with you in some of those 20 max contests. We shall see tonight.
Yeah, I was a little surprised that the MLB slate, the main one, was locking at 1 on DraftKings as opposed to 4, because I thought for sure it was going to be 4, and then it wasn't. So then I'd tell you, I'd tell Jacob they were changing all the show times and everything. So yeah, we'll see what they end up doing going forward with some of these baseball slates. But it is nice because we get all different slates throughout the day for all different sports. Like you said, I wasn't sure whether NBA, whether they're going to do a 2 or a 3 game slate, because we got the 2 games at 7. So we've got like the 1 o'clock baseball slate. Then we got a 5 o'clock NBA slate, 7 o'clock the MMA slate. So yeah, good stuff spread out all throughout the day. Good for me because I don't have shit else to do. So just talking about different sports, talking to you, talking to Bellman, and then then we'll just be watching it all on TV after this.
Yeah, I was saying on the earlier show, it's an Ehrenberg, Bellman, McPherson weekend. We each get 2 shows every day, or both days this weekend, and mixing up the sports. So this is going to be kind of fun as the others get the day off. There are a few godless heathens that work in the DFS world, so here we are. All righty, we've got close to 200 people in, so I think we can kind of get started here, Greg. I thought on-air production meeting, I thought Ace of Spades, we will get to you. I thought we would quickly go game by game here since there's such a large window. It might be a little easier to talk about it that way. We already have the information that we're looking for here for our first game of the night. Key things that we need to know are, there it is. So Al Horford is expected to play tonight, as are most of the Boston Celtics. That's going to make things interesting. We do not yet have that starting lineup, but the expectation is everybody's going to play. Atlanta seem to have their number. We'll get to talk about them in a bit. But on the New Orleans side, they're going to be without Jose Alvarado. Dyson Daniels will be available. Cody Zeller will be available, but no Brandon Ingram, because he could be done for the year. They're saying they hope he's ready if there's a chance for playoffs. But at this point, there are so many players that just keep getting punted out 5 or 6 more games until they're back. Hey, a lot of teams only have 7 to 9 left in the season, so I don't know how many of these guys are actually going to end up playing, but that's one of them. The Memphis game, we're waiting to hear what's up with Santi Aldama, doubtful with an illness. I don't think we'll see him. John Conchar, doubtful with the heel issue. I doubt we'll see him. Desmond Bain taking a game off here. Remember, he missed a large portion of the season, has a sore back. No real surprise. It's probably a bit of a maintenance day. And then we do have Jaron Jackson Jr., will be available. The wild card, Brandon Clark, he came off the bench, played about 21 minutes, just shy of that. I suspect we'll see between 22 and 24. That was on Wednesday, so he's had plenty of time to rest. I was telling Matt, I don't think he'll go over 28 minutes for the rest of the season. Wouldn't shock me if they close him down with 2 or 3 games left in the season just to preserve him for next year. That's the moving parts there. And then Orlando, no Gary Harris, no Jonathan Isaac, but we do have Markelle Fultz. Then the last wild card, Jalen Johnson. We don't know. He's questionable for that later game, and no Damian Lillard. So there are value spots, Greg. There's terrifying value spots, and there's some pay up options here. Not bad for a 16 player pool here.
Yeah, it is going to be interesting. It's definitely going to be a slate where I assume there's going to have to be some late swapping going on, which is why I was unsure if they were going to include that 5 p.m. game or not when we were first looking at the Saturday games. I know there's only a 2-hour gap between that and the next game, but we just typically don't have the injury news at that time. So a lot of those players that you had mentioned, most importantly, Jalen Johnson, I don't think we're going to have information on his availability until after the 5 p.m. game locks.
Right. I see Dick Chuck take some breaks. Hey, or breaths. Hey, that was good. That was everything I needed to talk about. Got it all out there. Now we can take a relaxed and meandering pace as we wander through here. Do you want to hit tiers, or do you want to do just do the games real quick, Greg?
Yeah. Let's answer the tiers question. If anybody else has questions for us, throw them into Discord and we'll answer them as we go here. And already there's actually, was this for... Oh, never mind. This was an MMA question. All right. So now also a little confusing. I just realized I'm getting like baseball, MMA, and NBA questions at the same time. So somebody asked me a cash game question, and I was like, cash game question. I looked, I was like, boy, this was asked well in advance of the show. Then I realized it was in the MMA, the MMA channel that was being asked. And so, I'm going to have to double check to make sure some of these questions I'm getting asked, what sport it is. But yeah, let's answer the question from Ace of Spade here. Asking his normal question, wants to know what we're liking for DK tiers. And starting with tier 1, I am getting to the most of by a mile, Giannis. Fairly easy choice in tier 1. Honestly, I don't even think they should have included him here. We see them do this pretty frequently where, let's say there's like Luka's on a slate, and then it's just guys who are usually players pricing like the 9K-ish range or something like that. They'll usually just leave that player out of tier 1. I think tier 1 would be really interesting if Giannis wasn't in it, but he is. So he's just the option with a bullet. Kind of hard to get away from him. Tier 2, that is going to be Paulo Banchero for me. Tier 3, that is going to be CJ McCollum. Tier 4, Bogdan Bogdanovic. Tier 5, Clint Capella. And then tier 6, Jalen Suggs. That rounds out my favorite options in each of the tiers.
Yeah, the biggest thing is with Giannis is he's the only one after projections reran again. There's a couple players within 15 fantasy points of him, just barely for the median outcome. He was all by himself today, and there were only 3 within 20 fantasy points. So we definitely want to talk about raw points when we get there. But let's hit on the games here quickly. We've got the first game is Boston at New Orleans. Both these teams have playoff aspirations. The Celtics 11-game lead in the Eastern Conference. They could probably just not play or just forfeit the rest of their games, Greg, and still hang on to that number 1 seed or darn close to it. They on a little bit of a skid. I don't think that's really going to impact what they're doing here, especially on the road. My guess is there's going to either be a surprise sit from someone, or there's going to be some potential in-game rest towards the end. Boston's still favored by 6, but if this is out of hand in either direction, Boston's just going to coast. There's no need for them to push to get back in the game. New Orleans is going to be going all out, but no Brandon Ingram hurts them. Who are your points people here? Because we're getting some increased salaries now for Hauser and Pritchard, but they still should get ample run in this one, as the different stars are probably not going to play much more than 30 minutes for Boston.
Yeah. So in terms of what do you mean by points people?
Their average points per dollar, I think, are interesting.
Gotcha.
They're not the slam dunks that they were when they were still super cheap. But on today's slate, we have to have a different bit of a lens because there are just 6 teams in the player pool. So normally we would be just crossing those guys off on a 6 and 8 game slate that we wouldn't even talk about them. But now we're sort of telling the story of how do they potentially get up to 23, 26 minutes? Is that a possibility? And there's a couple ways it could happen, even if everybody is playing for the Celtics.
Gotcha. Yeah. So starting with the Celtics, even though it's only a 3-game slate, there's a couple of things going on here. First off, almost nobody on the team is projected for ownership. And I also think that's pretty much warranted. The only player that I'm getting into lineups at any kind of meaningful rate is Jason Tatum. And that's really just because despite it being a 3-game slate, there is some value of Brandon Clark, somebody who stands out a little bit that you mentioned at the top of the show. So if you're looking to pay up, you can't really go wrong with Jason Tatum, in my opinion, just because there is available salary that makes it easy enough to get up to him. But as far as the other guys, I'm not getting to anything. I've got Porzingis in 3 lineups. I've got Derek White in 2, Drew Holiday in 2, 1 Jaylen Brown lineup. So out of 150 lineups, Jason Tatum, yeah, if you got the salary to pay up to him, cool. He fits into lineups. There isn't really a comparably priced guy at the small forward and power forward spot. Beyond that, though, I just don't know how you make a case for any of these Celtics guys because I don't think they're going to push them very hard. It's kind of like, did you see the quote that Michael Porter Jr. had the other day about the Denver Nuggets and their goals for the last couple weeks of the season?
No, but is it shorting his brother in same game parlays?
It was, yeah, it was just take the unders on all their props.
I didn't get a chance to talk about that yet.
So what Michael Porter Jr. said is they're just trying to stay healthy. They're seeding. They don't care about their seed. Results of games, don't care about it. Their only goal the last couple of weeks of the season is just to be healthy going into the playoffs. I presume it's the same goal for the Boston Celtics. As a result, it's hard to know what are the minutes going to look like. I very highly doubt we're going to see 40-minute games for any of these guys, kind of like you had alluded to. They're locked into the 1 seed. The difference in their record and everybody else, let's pull this up.
It's 11 games.
Yeah, 11 games on the Bucks. And if you look at the league standings, so if this was to go into the finals and they're taking on, the Timberwolves, OKC, or whatever, they're up 6 games on the Timberwolves, 6 games on OKC, 6.5 games on Denver. These games don't matter to Boston. There's no reason for them to matter. I know that people also will play it from the angle of, well, don't you want to keep these guys in rhythm or make sure that the chemistry is still good and they're fresh? Even then, you still have the issue of, all right, even if these guys played throughout the regular season up to the playoffs, well, then what happens? There's going to be the play-in games. Then there's a break. Then there's no scenario where these guys are going to be playing games regularly leading up to the playoffs. So they're just going to be trying to stay healthy going into the playoffs. So once again, some exposure to Jason Tatum, just because if you have the available salary, he makes sense. I don't really want anything else from Boston, though.
No, and that's definitely the way I'm looking at it as well. Are you cognizant enough in sports to remember Peyton Manning and the Colts and the Curtis Painter?
Yeah, I remember Peyton Manning and the Colts. Okay. They're still a team, by the way. I don't have to remember the Colts. They're still there.
No. The year that the Colts sat their starters for like the last 4 or 5 games of the season, and then came out super flat in the playoffs because they were like 13-1. So they started Curtis Painter for the last few games, and then if they had to buy it, et cetera, et cetera. That's the only time where it was like, but should they have rested that long? But even then, it's, what are you going to do if they had gotten hurt? It's a no-win situation. I see it, to your point, you're calling it out. Great. That play-in tournament kicks the can down the road just a couple more days than it did previously. So the really good teams are going to have a moment to take a rest. Alrighty. What would you like to call out on the other side here from New Orleans? Zion Williamson looking good. CJ McCollum is all right. Trey Murphy, the third, could be having a little bit of a moment. Then it gets to be a bit of a dice roll, but we are getting some players with a little bit of ownership there between Joe Val, Larry Nance Jr., and Herb Jones.
So here's the benefit of the Boston Celtics likely not pushing their guys to play big minutes. Probably means a slightly easier matchup for the New Orleans Pelicans. Not that this is an easy matchup by any means. It's still, a difficult one, but maybe not as difficult as it typically would be in these kind of scenarios. And then also, if we're talking about motivations for teams, well, the New Orleans Pelicans, they actually do have something to play for. The Pelicans are currently the 5 seed in the Western Conference. They're a game behind the 4 seed. It's definitely sensible to think that if they play well, they could end up as the 4 seed. Big difference between being the 4 and the 5 seed means you get home court advantage in the first round of the playoffs. The difference between the 5 seed and the 6 seed, it is 1 game. The difference between the 5 seed and the 7 seed, that's 2.5 games. That's a massive difference. Nobody wants to be the 7 seed or worse and have to play in that play-in game. So this is a very, very important. Every game remaining is important for the New Orleans Pelicans unless they, lock up their spot with a couple of games left. So with that in mind, I think we're going to see extended minutes out of all of the guys that matter for the New Orleans Pelicans. CJ McCollum, Zion Williamson, Trey Murphy being the ones that are most relevant. The front court's always hard to know what to make of Jonas Valanciunas and Larry Nance. I've never seen a team run a rotation like they do with their centers, and they do it regularly now. It seems like the way the Pelicans have decided is the best way for them to play is Valanciunas and Nance split the center minutes in the first half. Then the second half, Larry Nance plays the bulk of the minutes, and he's also the guy who closes at the center minutes. And it's been that way for a really long time. Remember all those games we had where it was like Jonas Valanciunas starts the first half, Larry Nance starts the second half. Be like, well, that's weird. And they just kept doing it. So it's something they do now. So even though he comes off the bench, we do have to expect more minutes from Larry Nance than Jonas Valanciunas. With that said, Valanciunas is the better fantasy producer, but it really kills the upside of both of them unless one of them get hurt. So I'm looking at this team. I like getting to Zion. I like getting to CJ McCollum, a couple shares of Trey Murphy, but primarily Zion and McCollum. Those are the guys that I'm getting exposure to as I look over here at my lineups.
All right, let's hit our next game. I do know we have we'll do cash games and top plays for both sides here. as we get going, fellas. Just wanted to make sure you guys know that, and ladies, if there are any ladies watching here. But I want to remind you, we are presented by PrizePicks today. So key things that you get: one, if you sign up through the link in the YouTube description below us here, you get up to a $100 deposit match on your first deposit, and you also get 1 free month of Odd Shopper Premium. That is a very, very valuable tool. I have been enjoying it for multiple sports. I use it for to write up the pick in each of my articles, free articles on the homepage every day for you guys. But that has been a great source of success for me. Greg gets limited at pretty much every sports book that exists between his ability to see the future with futures and just crushing the prop market. So you'll want to check that out. But over there at PrizePicks, key things, you could build your card up to 6 picks on it. That it becomes a $5 into $125 situation, which is pretty fun. They also do Flex Fridays. So you can wager up to $20 on a Flex card if every pick is on Friday. And if you lose, they will give you back up to $20. Last night, I can't play in Florida, so I had to send my picks to a friend. It was looking good, but I only went 4 of 6. So I only got $8 back, but then I got $12 because they gave me the Flex dollars back. Or, well, yeah, my friend who logged in for me. I don't know that that's a good thing or a bad thing to do. Feels like it's an okay thing, Greg, right? Well,
I think you just admitted it's something you're not supposed to do, but not.
But I'm not logging in here. They're logging in from another state, and I never look at it. I just tell them what I want. So technically, I could be somewhere else.
Multi-accounting. EMac's a bot. He's a bot. He's a bot.
Good times here. Good times here. But check that out. 5-player cards are up to 10x, and then Taco Tuesdays. A lot of fun. They offer discounts on 3 to 4 player props every Tuesday. All right, let's get into game number 2 here. Now things start to get interesting. Luke Kennard available. He was away from the team for personal reasons. I don't think Conchar and Aldama are going to play. We have Brandon Clark looking like one of the best point per dollar plays, but let's set expectations. 22 to 24 minutes is probably all we're going to see from him. How are you feeling about Brandon Clark today? I guess that's a good starting point since he should be in a majority of our lineups.
Pretty clearly the best value play on the slate, in my opinion. And you know, you're not going to get a game, to your point, where we get 30 minutes out of Brandon Clark. It's not on the cards. He is coming off of Achilles surgery, tore his Achilles last year. And I'm actually fairly surprised that he even got the minutes that he did in the first game of the season. We saw 21 minutes out of him. And I assume that's what we're going to be getting again, is somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 minutes out of Brandon Clark. But he is so cheap on FanDuel. on DraftKings that I think that we very strongly have to think of him as the best value play on the slate, because this is a guy who's always been around a fantasy point per minute producer. If he's going to play 20 minutes, then we should expect about 20 fantasy points. And at a $3,300 price tag on DraftKings, that's very appealing. Even over on FanDuel, where he's $4,400, he still lands in a bunch of my lineups to run everything through the Sims. The reason being is that there just isn't a whole lot of good value to get to. So for reference, guys, I have Brandon Clark in 80% of my top 150 projected lineups on FanDuel. And that's even though we barely have him over 20 fantasy points. So this is a slate with only 3 games. Don't think of guys at $3,300 or $4,400 as being like, oh my God, you have to get like 25 fantasy points out of him or anything like that. You just want to be rostering the guy who's the cheapest play that's going to be the best option on the slate. And I think that's Brandon Clark by a mile over the other available options.
Yeah, and there's not much else I can add to that. One thing I did want to call out is Jonathan Goodwin down in the G League. He is basically up against the games played to have his 2-way contract converted. So as long as we get Scottie Pippen Jr. in the starting lineup, I think we should see 30 minutes from him. He's an interesting one. Anything else you want to call out from Memphis? Perhaps a Jaren Jackson Jr. They've got people. Doesn't mean they're good players at this point. They're not running 7 again.
I mean, actually, I would push back on that. I wouldn't even say they have people. They have a limited number of people they just have to give minutes to. They don't even have. We've seen this regularly from Memphis. They never even cared enough to sign guys to fill out the rest of the roster. Like oftentimes when teams get hurt, we see a bunch of G League call-ups. We see a bunch of 10-day contracts given up. Maybe they've doled out so many of these contracts that they're up against it in terms of what they're allowed to do. We've got a Xavier Simpson sighting. I don't know if you're aware of that. Xavier Simpson was signed to a 10-day contract. Do you remember him, EMac?
No, I do not.
He's the Xavier Simpson. He's Captain Hook. He's like 5'6" and he only shoots hook shots. He was the 10 commander for the Oklahoma City Thunder a couple of years ago. He's back in the mix. He got signed to a 10-day contract by the Memphis Grizzlies. But yeah, this guy's a very tiny point guard who only shoots hook shots and resurfaces at the end of NBA seasons. We've also got a guy named Mozinha Pereira, who was signed to a 10-day contract for Memphis. And I'm fairly sure this guy's a UFC fighter. That sounds like a very Brazilian MMA name. But beyond that, like in terms of guys that typically play minutes for this team, we've got Jaren Jackson Jr., we've got Gigi Jackson, we've got Laravia, Kennard, and that's kind of it. The rest of it, it's like guys that are going to be in the NBA next year in all likelihood. So with that being the case, I do think we could project pretty decent minutes to some of these guys. Relative to ownership, Jaren Jackson Jr. projected for 6% ownership on DraftKings. That's actually one of my favorite contrarian options on the entire slate. Gregory Jackson lands into some lineups for me as well, as does Jake Laravia. So there's a bunch of guys I'm overweight to here. So just to summarize, Brandon Clark, my favorite overall value play on the slate. Overweight to Laravia at modest ownership. I love Jaren Jackson Jr. as a contrarian play. And Gigi Jackson also is serviceable, but not particularly great as a contrarian option, but I have him in 15% of lineups.
Yeah. And this is the weirdest thing. So like with Jordan Goodwin, he's not on their injury report, which also means he's not listed as being on a G League assignment like DeJon Jarreau is. So Yuta Watanabe not with the team. He's just fill in the blank. Vince Williams Jr., I doubt he's going to play the rest of the season. Probably the same with Zaire Williams. Derrick Rose, probably the same thing. But now we've got sort of missing people between Goodwin and Jamison. That's why when I say if they're starting, there you go. And that even applies to Scottie Pippen Jr., who also has a game count. He's approaching there as well. So it's one of those where searching Twitter, searching the NBA injury report, it's kind of dicey.
By the way, something that's funny, people in chat are being like, oh my God, does that mean that Goodwin isn't here? Goodwin's not a regular guy. Goodwin's also a 10-day contract guy who is not really a part of this team. So, I mean, we've seen when Goodwin comes off the bench, he very often either doesn't play or doesn't play very much. So Goodwin is projected. We do have him in, but I mean, we're projecting him only for a few minutes, nothing really significant.
Right. And so I think a better way of couching what I was saying is if they're not in the starting lineup and it's Goodwin, Jamison, Pippen, I wouldn't trust it. I don't know. Now we did go look up the rule is if somebody is active, it does count as one of their games, or it counts towards their accrual time, but it's a mess. But if we look at Goodwin is at 49 games. He played 40 with Phoenix. He's played 9 with Memphis. 50 is the magic number. So I kind of don't think we're going to see him again. Funny enough, he was with not the Nationals. Good God, I'm in baseball. He was with the Wizards a couple years ago, mostly coming off the bench, but it's just one of those nominal players here. But it's dangerous with some of these guys. But anybody starting for Memphis looks pretty good tonight.
Yeah, and just to touch on that as well, it is going to be very difficult to trust players coming off the bench for Memphis because you just don't know what their minutes allocation is going to look like or anything like that. But my expectation is that Gigi Jackson, Jaren Jackson Jr., Jake Laravia all start. The one guy off the bench that I should clarify is that Brandon Clark is almost certainly not going to start, but that's just because he's coming off the torn Achilles. He's absolutely going to be a part of the rotation still. He's the one guy who comes off the bench that still is like secure minutes.
Yeah, and he played, I went and looked at the game log. It looked like he played around the midpoint of each of the quarters for between 4 and 6 minutes across there. So that seems somewhat likely. A lot of times we see people coming back play, 4 minutes at the start of each quarter or whatever. So they're trying to just monitor their minutes for him. They just had him coming off the bench for that one. For the Orlando side, now we do with Markelle Fultz, without Gary Harris, without Jonathan Isaac. Is there anything sliding up the value proposition for you? It's the third game in 4 nights. And then Banchero played 38 minutes last night. Wagner played 36, and they pissed away a win at home against the visiting Los Angeles Clippers, 100-97. They had the lead with about 2.5 minutes to go and then fumbled it away.
So something else of note that's important here. This is another team in Orlando that does have reason to play for these last, 9 games of the season for them. And game, fairly likely to be a blowout based on what the spread is. We have the Magic as, 13.5 point favorites now in a game that it's not expected to be particularly fast paced, only 206.5 total. But here's the situation in the standings. The Orlando Magic could finish as high as the 3 seed. That's unlikely, but definitely possible in the Eastern Conference. They're 2.5 games behind Cleveland. They're 2 games behind the Knicks for the 4 spot, but they're also only 1 game up on the Pacers for the 6 spot. And then they are 2 games up on the Miami Heat for the 7 spot. So Magic are absolutely still going to be going all out trying to win these games. And this team is projected for a ton of ownership. We've got Jalen Suggs, 27%. Cole Anthony, 45%. Paulo Banchero, 26%. Mo Wagner, 37%. Franz Wagner, 29%. There are definitely players we want to get to on this team, pretty much all the guys I just read off to you. But these are players that are almost all overowned, in my opinion. And guys, when I was running everything through the Sims, I came in underweight to them. While I did get a decent amount of ownership to these guys, other than Jalen Suggs, I was pretty decently underweight to all of them. Like Cole Anthony, for instance. Yeah, I think he's one of the better points per dollar plays on the slate. I just don't think he belongs in half of lineups. So the field's getting to him in 45% of lineups. He's in 33% of my lineups. Same as somebody like Mo Wagner. Mo Wagner project for 37% ownership. I got him in 20% of my lineups. That's kind of the story of the Orlando Magic to me. These guys are good points per dollar plays. They're just so popular, and I think they come in overowned.
All right, I'm doing a quick overlay check here, Greg. I don't really think there's going to be much on FanDuel. Conceivably, there could be a little in their nickel contest. DK could see a little bit of reduced rake in some of their the dollar contest there. 4,300 out of 7,100, the $1.20 max. There's a chance that one doesn't quite get full, but that people may jump into that late. And then looked like Yahoo might be in their usual semi-reduced rake rule. This is a holiday weekend with a lot of wonky start times. At some point, some slate is going to luck out. Today, I think it was the UFL, the whatever football league they're calling it, Unlimited Football League, I'm guessing, United Football League, who knows? But we do have projections for it. That was Matt Gajewski. I was busy writing my articles, boss. I want you to know that. So I missed the message when Melissa told me, hey, some of these DK double ups are going to be pretty empty here for the UFL, and I missed that. But again, be poised. We don't know where it's going to happen, but overlay is going to happen. It's somewhere today and tomorrow. Just bank on that. All right, let's hit the third game, and then we'll get to all the questions that we have. Shout out to Chris Williams, just pumping out those subscriptions there to the old YouTube channel. So that's always fun. All right,
Shout out to Chris.
Let's see. We have my frozen screen. Milwaukee and Atlanta. This is going to be a fun one. The wild card here is Jalen Johnson. We don't know his availability. And Antetokounmpo is in. Patrick Beverley is in. He was dealing with a sprained wrist. You've got Chris Middleton in. No Damian Lillard. Chris Middleton sees a massive assist rate increase to almost 34% when Lillard is off the court. I was trying to figure out who the hell was going to be the point guard if Beverley was out when I was researching this morning. My answer was some combination of Antetokounmpo, Chris Middleton, and probably Malik Beasley, maybe AJ Jackson. I don't think we need to worry about AJ Jackson at this point. Maybe we see a little bit of Malik Beasley or a little bit more. Trae Young still out, but likely probable to play in the postseason, or maybe even get in a little bit of action prior to the end of the season. Onyeka Okongwu is out, but he had 1 game back, and then he's just not ready to go after his injury. So this is the kind of the game of the night. 223 projected point total here. Big time winning situation for both teams. Milwaukee is trying to battle Cleveland and New York to maintain that 2nd seed in the Eastern Conference. They have a slight edge, while Atlantic is trying to climb out of the play-in contention, or improve their play-in tournament lot here. You have seen DeJounte Murray in the 17 games without Trae Young just kicking ass. I think he has 10 games of at least 50 fantasy points in that stretch. He's dropping threes like a madman. He's just doing a little bit of everything. So he's a fine play. Still, all that said, he's still 15 median fantasy points behind Giannis here. What do you like for our late night hammer or the 4:30 West Coast hammer?
Yeah. So one thing I want to ask you is there's certain seeds that I think matter. 4 versus 5, 6 versus 7. Obviously, that's massive. Do you think teams even want to be the 2 seed in the East? You might have to play the 76ers in the first round with a healthy Joel Embiid. Would you rather play the 76ers with Embiid in the first round? Or would you rather play like the Orlando Magic or the Indiana Pacers? I think I'd rather be the lower seed.
I think we're a little too close for that to be worried yet. Gamesmanship with 4 games to go, if it's still this tight, yes, and we know more about what's happening with Embiid, but also because they still don't reseed, right? That's hockey that reseeds, so it's home court advantage as long as you have the higher edge. So if you have the number 2 seed, you've got it until the Eastern Conference Finals. I think that still makes enough of a difference, but you bring up a valid point.
Yeah,
I think it's too early now to count on Embiid coming back.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Joel Embiid's supposed to be back like what, in a week or something like that. But yeah, I don't know how hard the Bucks are going to be going in these games. Now, for today's slate, there's 3 games. We only have so many options to choose from. We've got Giannis and Middleton playing without Damian Lillard, so they're good options. They're also, very popular. Giannis is projected for 67% ownership. That's right around where I am. It's hard to get more than 2/3 of your lineups with Giannis. So with that in mind, Giannis is the top overall pay-up option on the slate. If you guys were asking me, could you only roster one? Like if you had to choose between Giannis, DeJounte Murray, or Jason Tatum, I'm going to tell you the guy you want to be going with is Giannis in that scenario in the absence of Damian Lillard. And like you said, Middleton also looks better in the absence of Damian Lillard. One thing that also really helps Middleton is that his price tag is fairly modest right now. He is $6,600 over on DraftKings. His FanDuel price is $6,900. So with Damian Lillard out and his price point where it is, I think you just play Chris Middleton anyway. But I am definitely going to be monitoring these guys' minutes to see how I want to project them going forward. The other thing to talk about from the Milwaukee Bucks, there's value available because Damian Lillard's out. So starting in his place, I do expect that to be Patrick Beverley. So Beverley at $3,600 on DraftKings, to me, is the second overall best value play on the slate. The only player like more than him around that price point is Brandon Clark. And then over on FanDuel, Patrick Beverley also lands in a ton of my lineups. So Beverley on FanDuel, I consider the best value play. On DraftKings, Brandon Clark, the best value play.
All right. Are you ready for some questions? We have 30 minutes until lock here.
Well, we still have the Atlanta Hawks to talk about ish. I just don't know what to say about them because
without Jalen Johnson, it's hard to mention. But go ahead.
Yeah, I'll say this: if you guys are using the Sims tool and you're trying to figure out which players to give ROI boost to, just with the potential of Jalen Johnson being out, I'll say give ROI boost to DeJounte Murray and Bogdanovich and DeAndre Hunter. I think if you get those 3 players in a little bit more lineups, it'll give you a little bit more flexibility. But Jalen Johnson, even if he does play, he's not somebody that I'm really all that interested in. So that's one thing that makes it not as much of a pain in the ass that he's questionable. Is even if we knew he was in right now, which we have him projected in, he lands in 5% of my lineups on FanDuel. And then on DraftKings, he lands in 6% of lineups. So even if Jalen Johnson plays, not really that interested.
All right. I got a tweet here from Matt Butler, who is watching. He says, hey, just wanted you, I'm paraphrasing, but just wanted you guys to have all the information. Goodwin's not a 10-day guy. Yes, we knew that. He's on a 2-way. He did not play in the G League last night. Neither did Jamison. They, potentially he could be.
Wait, but that's also besides the point, because the question was not, is he going to be active or not? People were asking about playing him. Right? Like I'm not playing Jordan Goodwin today. We are projecting him in. We're just not projecting him for a lot of minutes.
Yeah, no, that's fair. All right. But we appreciate providing the info there. Okay. How about top fantasy draft? Lots a long time ago. FanDuel plays at each position, please. And then this was I'm
Who
looking.
was it?
I thought there was one of each. They're both the top DK plays. I'm
Gotcha.
trying to
All
help
right,
you
so it was
FanDuel people out. Come on.
shout out to Tim Bourne as well as Tupelo Joe asking us for our favorite
Tupelo.
plays.
Tupelo, Greg. Tupelo, Mississippi.
That's your opinion. So looking at my DraftKings lineups at point guard, Patrick Beverley, feel pretty good about that. Beverley starting in all likelihood in place of Damian Lillard, even if he comes off the bench, which I think he's going to start. But 3-game slate, there's only so many cheap guys to choose from. Beverley is going to be benefiting in the absence of Dame. At shooting guard, Bogdan Bogdanovic, who also already as is looks serviceable, but then also just the potential that Jalen Johnson is going to be out. That makes Bogdanovic look even better in that scenario. So like I said before, players to give ROI boost to, Bogdanovic is amongst them. At small forward, Chris Middleton. Power forward, Giannis. And then at center, Brandon Clark.
Let's see. Andrew James said, yeah, missed playing 4 centers. Yes, those were the days on fantasy draft. Also 4 running backs if you wanted to as well. There we go. Tupelo Joe says, thanks, EMac. That's right, bud. I got you. Now, this Tupelo Joe guy, I don't know. Sounds like an imposter. Let's see. Any family phone calls during the show so far, Greg?
Not a family phone call. Yet? But I've gotten 2 phone calls. My dad did call me right before the show started. And it was right, like I'm saying like 5 minutes before we're about to start, my dad calls and I was like, hey, I can't talk right now, about to start a show. And then he started telling me about his golf round yesterday. And I unfortunately had to hang up on him to start the show. I wasn't trying to be a dick or anything, obviously, but I told him I can't talk right now, about to start a show. And he just started telling me about just no concept of time or the fact that like my shows can't just start later because my dad is playing golf and wants to tell me about it. It's unfortunate. It's just the way it goes. I've told the story on the show before. I was telling it to Jacob and EMac before, but this was a little while ago that happened. But during COVID, I was staying at my parents' house. I was staying in a guest room in my parents' basement at the time. And I was doing a live TV show on SNY, which is a New York channel. It's where the Mets play their games and there's like football shows on there and stuff. So I'm doing a Sunday morning football pregame show and I'm live on TV. And my dad thought there was nobody in the basement. So he just turned the lights off and everything went black while I was on live TV. So there's never going to be a point where my parents ever figure out what it is that I do. So he called me. It was right before the show started. And then my friend Nick the Picker, he also called me about 10 minutes ago while we were on the show. But nothing else. And my grandma called on Live Before Lock last night. Nobody wants to talk to me except for when it's inconvenient.
This is just beautiful. Like I can't think of a more closely knit family than Clan Ehrenberg there. This is good. All right. No news popping up. That's sad. Oh, Boston Celtics starting lineup. As expected, Drew Holiday, Derek White, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, and Kristaps Porzingis. We also got the New Orleans Pelicans, CJ McCollum, Herb Jones, Trey Murphy, Zion Williamson, Jonas Valanciunas. I think Zion's going to be the one guy I'm afraid I'm not getting enough to, that I may have to manipulate some of our ROI boosts, because he's just falling off right now, Greg. Is that the case for you, or is that a personal problem?
Sorry, who were you asking me about?
Zion.
Yeah, so as far as Zion goes, he is one of the players that I like getting to from the New Orleans Pelicans. And I mean, the field's getting to him in 25% of lineups. That's about where I'm at on him as well. One thing that's nice about the Pelicans, guys, we know there's motivation. There's reason for them to want to play, considering where they are in the standings. So we don't have any concerns about what those playing times are going to be for those guys. And then also, we know that Brandon Ingram's still out for the team. So that's going to mean more usage going to Zion.
All right. That's a good question also while we're with the Pelicans. How much do you think Dyson Daniels is going to
play? Let's see. Dyson Daniels. By the way, this guy AH in chat gets very upset whenever I tell stories. He's convinced that they're not real. There's nothing. These are dumb stories. There's no reason for to make it up. And also, EMac even was a witness to the one before. He was. You saw.
I was. Greg was like, "Oh my God, my dad is calling me yet again," and he puts himself on mute. And I say, "Scuba," and producer Jacob laughs. That's exactly what happened.
Yeah. Well, and also, look at this. I could actually. Okay. All calls. Here we go. Look at this right here. I can hold this up to my phone. You can see, right? You can see
There
Nick
it
called
is.
me at 4:08. And you can see my dad, Scuba, called me because he's at Scuba, my phone, 3:51, right before the show started. You can see my recent calls. Look at
Grandma
that.
and Grandpa. There you go. There you go. It's all good. And now you got Guitar Z-Man saying that he's here for the stories. Obi-Wan says the
And
same
these are
thing.
you asked me, I answered the question, but I've got the phone logs right here. Got the phone logs.
All right. We'll do the Ehrenberg phone logs, but we're never going to mention Yahoo on the slate. Or on this show. I just want everybody to know that. Okay. So we have 20 minutes until a lock here. We've got, let's get the old Discord. Is anybody writing to us in Discord?
I could pull up the Discord and check.
I always make sure I have
no.
it when I'm on air with Eric, but I know you've always got me covered here, which is.
Oh, we did actually just get a question from JEW. JEW wants to know any guys from the first game for DK single entry, and then also last man in for 5,000 and under. Okay, so let's look at this from two different standpoints. For the first part of the question, any guys from the first game for a single entry lineup? Not from the Celtics. There's nobody from Boston I'd be looking to play in single entry. There's nobody from the Pelicans that I think you have to play in single entry, but my favorite overall guys from the team are CJ McCollum and Zion Williamson. If I had to pick one, I would lean towards Zion, but I'd lean towards McCollum over Zion because he's $1,300 less expensive, but nobody you have to play from the first game. The other part of the question, last man in for $5,000 and under. All right, so this could be at any position. 5,000 and under. Cole Anthony. Yeah. Cole Anthony, $4,900. He's definitely the guy I want to go with there. The player that we have projected close to him is Malik Beasley, and I don't feel nearly as good about him as a fantasy producer as Cole Anthony, and there's still a projection gap between them. So Cole Anthony, there's your guy if you're rostering somebody 5,900 and under for your last spot there, JEW.
All right, drop the link there to the DFS building blocks into chat. My wager of the day is the under on 7.5 rebounds for Paolo Banchero, partly because of potential lopsided game, partly because he played 38 minutes, and partly because he doesn't get nearly as many rebounds as one would expect. Now, he can from game to game, and it could be, a little different today. As always, with people out, the balls could bounce to him, right? Variance happens. But the one good thing, if we look at his last, let's see, 15 or so games, he has, in his last 12 games, 7 of the 12, he's had less than 8 rebounds. So that's a 58%. In this stretch, he's averaging just about 6.5 rebounds. We're projecting him for 7.6, 34.2 minutes, but the unders here, you got to find a path to do it. Look for slow-paced teams, potential lopsided games, people that might need rest, people going against good defenses. Those are the key ways to find that. And use Odd Shopper because it filters a lot of those to the top for you, and then you can put a little extra analysis around things, or just look at some of the free picks that we're giving you there. And MLB, 30% off any MLB package. That's promo code DINGER. You'll want to look at that. I hit my wager of the day yesterday, plus 870 for JP Crawford to hit a home run. The Mariners won 1-0 yesterday. and that was my wager. Sometimes it's better to be lucky than good, Greg. Well,
and also, so one thing that is fun about the home run props and also can be frustrating at times, and a good point by somebody in the chat. Yeah, we didn't talk about Dyson Daniels' minutes. Nothing significant. I think he plays 10-ish or so today. So not somebody who's going to play enough minutes to be significant. But the point on the home run props, which are generally the ones that Odd Shopper finds the most value on, particularly on the FanDuel side, is, you could bet like 5 home run props in a day. One of them wins and you're probably going to come away positive money for the day. But yeah, they are fairly high variance, but they're the ones that Odd Shopper does identify as being the highest value bets.
especially on FanDuel. They tend to be the ones
Yeah.
that have the highest price. And is that, I thought I heard you mention on one show, that's because they, even if the player pinch hits, it's a good wager. They don't, the player doesn't have to start.
So FanDuel grades their home run props different from every other book. Whereas if you're placing a home run bet on DraftKings, for instance, if the player you bet on doesn't start, bet gets voided. Doesn't matter if they pinch hit and hit a home run. Doesn't matter if they pinch hit and strike out. It's a voided bet. On FanDuel, if a player doesn't start, the bet counts as long as that player comes into the game. So the way that I think you guys should be betting home run props on FanDuel, because it's how I bet them, is if something projects really well on FanDuel and OddsShopper, I'm still waiting till that player's confirmed in the starting lineup, because you run the risk of, I learned this early in the year last year, you run the risk if you're betting home run props early in the day on FanDuel of a player not starting, coming into a game and pinch hitting, and then it's like you need them to homer in that one at bat or the bet loses. So if you're betting home run props on FanDuel, just wait until the starting lineup is out to confirm that they are in.
All righty. How are your lineups going? I'm going to quickly run the Sims. We have 15 minutes to go here, so ample time. And then we've got a 2-hour break until the 7 o'clock and the 7:30 games. We can set our MLB lineups. The evening slate is locking at 7:05, and then also MMA locking at 7. So key things to note with that. What happened to my window with chat? What else do we have? Chat, nothing too exciting there. Could you go through the best FanDuel plays?
Yep. So if I'm talking about the FanDuel side of things, the players I have the most exposure to at each position on FanDuel, at point guard, that is Patrick Beverley, because of Damian Lillard being out. Not somebody that we're typically playing a whole bunch of, but Dame out, Beverley looks good for a 3-game slate. Shooting guard, Chris Middleton. That is also because Damian Lillard's out. Small forward, Bogdanovic. And as far as Bogdanovic, he is somebody who, same exact deal as DraftKings. He already looks good on FanDuel. There's a potential of Jalen Johnson being out. He's somebody, if you guys are building lineups with our Sims, I recommend you giving a positive ROI boost to Bogdanovic. At power forward, Brandon Clark. At center, Jaren Jackson Jr., who is relative to a 3-game slate, one of my favorite options at lesser ownership to get to on both DraftKings and FanDuel. On FanDuel, he's projected for a little bit more ownership than he is on DraftKings. DraftKings, he has single-digit ownership. FanDuel, we've got Jaren Jackson coming in at 20% ownership, but still I'm overweight to him on both sites.
Anybody that you're terrified of not having tonight or being underweight
on? Let's see. Who's the guy that probably most afraid of? I mean, hardly getting to any of the Celtics guys other than some shares of Jason Tatum. So certainly running some risk if somebody from the Celtics just goes nuts.
That's
other than that.
And PowerBooks has named it. It's not which play will terrify you the most. It's what's the Ehrenberg phone log play? The player that will put up numbers at the most inopportune time because he's not in your lineup.
Oh, good point. That's very clever. I like that. I like that quite a bit. Probably Mo Wagner, because when it comes to Wagner, he's nearly 40% owned by the field. That is super, super popular. By the way, once again, shout out to PowerBooks, because it's a clever one. It's a good one. I like it. But yeah, just because of the ownership of Mo Wagner and the fact that he is a good points per minute fantasy producer, I'm going to say him. I prefer Brandon Clark. I prefer Patrick Beverley. He's not somebody who's like an outright fade for me, but I have about half as much exposure to Wagner as the field does.
All right. I am putting in a few ROI boosts here. Do it,
EMac. Do it.
Bobby Portis, I think, is good. I'm playing him over on my Yahoo lineup. It's $19. Can't get away from that. I'm going to have to bump Zion here a little bit. Going to have to bump Jaren Jackson. I think that'll do it. I'm betting the under on Paolo Banchero. Had to send that to my friend. This is not fun. Being in
Morningwood Blue says that you're young enough to be his younger brother.
Really? There we go. There we go. That's good to know. What all right, let's do the upload here. What do you have going on tonight? Just nothing but watching some sports?
Well, ideally a lot of drugs. Ideally. Unfortunately, there's There is a situation. The dispensary down the street has stopped taking credit card, which is super. Who carries cash on them in 2024?
No,
So it's either cash or you have to set up this thing called Dutchy Pay. So I have to do that.
Which I love that. You get the joke, right? Do the kids still call it Dutchy? Pass the Dutchy.
It's a service. So I don't really because I'm gonna have to sign up for it after this.
No. But Dutchy, it's slang for marijuana.
But it's also it's a payment service. There's a payment service called Dutchy Pay, and it's apparently only for weed transactions at dispensaries. Apparently.
Oh, hence the name. Musical Youth, Pass the Dutchie. Let's see, that came out, I'm gonna guess 1982. Somebody fact check me on that.
Yeah, because I've always gone there. It's right down the street for me. I've always gone there and just paid with my credit card. And now it's you have to either have cash or this stupid Dutchie Pay thing. So I have to set this thing up. I have to link it to my bank account. It's a whole big ordeal. It's going to take me like 6 minutes to do, and I couldn't be more annoyed by it.
All right, and 2 gets it. He remembers the song. Pass the Dutchie on the left-hand side. Good song. Oh, there we go. Pierre says 1982. That's pretty good. Nice little pull there. I remember that from Casey Kasem, Top 40, American Countdown, whatever that used to be called. We've got 9 minutes to go. 9 minutes to go. Is marijuana legal in New Jersey?
Yeah. I also have a medical license, which basically means when I go there, I don't have to pay taxes. If you have a medical marijuana license, like, because it's legal everywhere in New Jersey, anybody could just walk in. Well, you have to be of age. You can't be like a 2-year-old and walk in. I'd be curious how you got there if you're a 2-year-old. But anybody could go and purchase weed in New Jersey. You just have to have a legal ID. But if you do have the medical marijuana license, then you don't have to pay taxes.
Gotcha. Do you ever run into T. McBee up there in line?
I have not but probably similar to me. I don't think he gets out very much, but it's good. I'm looking forward to, because when it's nice out during the summer, I could just walk there. It's a mile down the street. So it's a little bit easier even to walk there than it is to drive, because I have to go around one of the circles. I hate driving around circles. I always think I'm going to get into an accident.
All right, now I have to look this up. First musical guest on Saturday Night Live. That can't be. That's first host. Why does it not say first?
By the way, 4-Prong Digger asked, how do I feel about Scottie Pippen Jr. and then also favorite point guard for DraftKings? So as far as Scottie Pippen Jr., I want to see what the starting lineups are for Memphis before I really know for sure. But as things stand right now, I am not really getting to Scottie Pippen Jr. And one thing that also is making it a little bit prohibitive to get to him, he's $5,300. All those slates where we were playing Scottie Pippen Jr., he was like $3,800, $4,200. Now that his salary has gone up to $5,300, it's not a price point I'm particularly interested in. As for his other question, it was, who is my favorite overall point guard on DraftKings? Yeah, so favorite overall point guard, that is Patrick Beverley at $3,600. One of my favorite overall value plays on both DK and FanDuel. And then JEW wanted to know a 2v2 question: McCollum and Mo Wagner, or Bogdanovich and Cole Anthony for a DK single entry. I'm going to go Bogdanovich and Anthony, mostly because of the ownership of Mo Wagner. I think it's way too high, so I'm hoping he doesn't go out and crush the slate, because he seems like he's going to be super popular.
Yeah, Bogdanovich is always a challenge. Did you know Steve Martin was never part of the Saturday Night Live cast officially?
I did. There's a lot. Robert Downey Jr. was a Saturday Night Live cast member. Did you know that?
I did know that, because that was around the time I was on Anthony Michael Hall as well in that time frame. I did not realize that Steve Martin was not. He was just on it all the damn time.
Steve Martin was. Ben Stiller was a cast member. I'm trying to think, who are the other ones who are really famous people that were short-lived. Those are the 3 that come to mind immediately.
Julie Louis-Dreyfus.
That's true. She's another one.
Yeah.
She was for what, like a season or 2?
I think only 1 or even half a season. There was some weird thing around it, but yeah, she was.
Malakar said Bob Odenkirk. Odenkirk was a writer for a very long time, though. Wasn't he there for many, many years?
I didn't know that.
I think Bob Odenkirk was there for a very long time.
Yeah. Desmond would.
Oh, I didn't know that. I can't imagine that he was a good writer for Saturday Night Live.
Let's see. What do we got going on? Oh, for those of you wanting to know the most owned players for DraftKings, you can hop on over to Playback right now because producer Jacob is sharing those. I will drop that link into chat there so you guys can see that. But that is the other site where we are doing some after the show fun and games. That's always good. Greg is over there every weeknight talking sports, betting, talking late swap, all the good stuff there. I see someone asking, is there a show for MLB tonight? There is not.
No, not for MLB. I'm going to be in the Discord, so if anybody's questions, I'll be hanging out in Discord and answering questions. But some of these Saturday slates are going to be tricky to navigate with baseball because there was 3 different slates today. So the way that I did it, I was like, all right, we'll do a show for the early slate. And if people have questions about any of the later slates, we could answer it on there as well. But yeah, it's hard to justify doing like a baseball show from 1 to 2, from 3 to 4, and then another one from 6 to 7. So we'll see what some of the slates look like going forward. But yeah, typically going to be one per day for some of these. We did get another question in Discord from JEW. Wants to know how many Grizzlies are needed in single entry. Needed, I would say 0 are needed. My favorite one is Brandon Clark, though. And beyond that, though, I don't even know that there's another Grizzlies player that I would even really like that much for single entry.
Sharon Jackson Jr. maybe, but not overly.
I don't think I would play him in single entry, though. I like him as a contrarian play in large field tournaments, but he wouldn't be in my single entry lineup.
Olrat with the super chat. Does it matter if Beverly doesn't start? If it's Connaughton starting, does that change anything for you?
A little bit. It wouldn't take him out of play for me, but it would definitely mean that we have to project him for less minutes and he'd show up in less lineups as a result. If Beverly wasn't starting, then my most rostered point guard would be DeJounte Murray in all likelihood.
Right.
That would have a big trip. That would have a fairly big trickle down effect too, because if we lose Patrick Beverly, well, not that we would lose him, but if he becomes less appealing as a value option, then him coming down in ownership would mean I would get more of DeJounte Murray, which in turn would mean I get less of Giannis. So there'd be like a really, really big impact on my lineups if that starting lineup is different than what I think it's going to be.
All right, I just dropped Bellman's contrarian article for the MLB main slate. At the 6 gamer, I dropped my spotlight pitchers and top stacks. I do 1 stack and 1 pitcher for each slate. Tonight, everything happens to be up for the later games, so it's double dipping on those. When baseball's over, or when basketball's over, I will be writing the early slates up as well. It just is a little tricky here with that. But if the early slate is the main slate, like it's going to be on a couple getaway days here, I will write a full baseball article for those. Those are going to be free, so you guys can check that out. We are about 3 minutes away from lock. One last overlay check to see what's going on out there. We've got the site that Greg hates has a little bit of actual overlay. Their $20 is going to fall a little short of filling. So is their $3, but the prize pools are super small. First place, $350. That's not very much. I think it's sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy, Greg, that not many people are playing over there. The regs are not represented. What else do we have as I enter way more than I should because I think some of these are going to fill. Just make sure I don't click that $5,000 head-to-head against that stunner because I don't want to lose. I've only got $6,800 in my Yahoo account. I do not want to lose 5,000 of that. That would take me a long time to grind that back, Greg. A long time. We are almost here at lock. Any last things that you would like to mention? Perhaps talk about the lineup generator. Anything else?
Chris Williams said we missed super chats. So let's see. What yeah, we got a bunch of super chats. Or not a bunch, but oh no, there was only 1 super chat here.
Oh,
it was
I was saving that one until we were after lock.
All right. All right. So we got Tupelo Joe, or as I call him, Tupelo Joe. We've got EMac and I have a difference of opinion on how certain cities are pronounced, but he wants to know. He says Jut got back from the store, Greg, indica or sativa. So my preference is to get edibles that I can just take to sleep at night. So whichever ones have CBD in them, there. Nothing too crazy.
What are those two things mean? I mean, obviously they're different strains, but
so here's my opinion. I think it's all a load of bullshit. I think this is big marijuana coming in and trying to convince you they're more sophisticated than they are.
Gotcha. All I wanted was no shake, very, very ideally no stems or seeds, and maybe some cool sticky buds. That was the way to go back in the 80s.
But also, in my opinion, maybe other people are more sophisticated than me. I'm either sober or I'm not sober. There's not a thing where people are like, oh, like it's like wine tasting to me. I kind of call bullshit on it.
Oh, good times. We are at lock there officially. They would like you to know it's not all the same.
Yeah, I disagree.
Pierre says no stems, no sticks. Exactly. We had different grading systems back then when it was not readily available on most corners. And even though I don't partake anymore, I think it should be legal everywhere. I have zero issue with this. Please don't drive. That's my only request. Just don't operate motor vehicles when you're under influence of anything. Otherwise, knock yourself out. Do whatever you want. It doesn't matter to me on that one. But let's slide on out of here. So shout out to Greg, of course. You can find him on Twitter at Ehrenberg DFS. I am at EMac DFS. Producer Jacob, as always, has us covered here. It's going to be a good one. So with that, gamers, follow us at stochastic_com on X, formerly known as Twitter. And good luck.